But there's very, very few instances where the UK government over the years has responded in a way where basically have been seen to sort of retreat from their position. So, we then come to dissolution. Unilateral Declaration of Independence. Now, normally this happens if you're a colony. Now, I know there's a lot of discussion, Alfred and people like that saying, we are actually a colony, a de facto colony, despite the fact that we're a partner in a voluntary union. But we're not a colony. Legally, we're not a colony. We're not America. We're not like Rhodesia, as was, or New Zealand, Canada, etc., etc. So we are not there. And normally, the unilateral Declaration of Independence happens if you are a colony. So we had it in America many moons ago. We also had it in Rhodesia, and of course, the UK government reaction again in America obviously ended involved warfare. In Rhodesia, there was sanctions, etc., because basically it was a sort of apartheid system that they were introducing, etc. So I think the UK government would take very much a stance that they would try and give us as much of the cold shoulder as possible. And the other thing about that is that a unilateral Declaration of Independence means that you are not normally seeking to retain any of the assets of the former state of which you are part. That's basically there. So it puts us in a position where our bargaining, shall we say, is less could be less effective than another means. Again, there's international reaction. If you do UDI, organisations like the EU, etc., always say that they want it done through a legal means. There are rules. They say there are rules-based organisation. People could comment, and it all depends who's imposing the rules and who's taking them. But that's what they say. So it's not. It would be extremely messy, I think, if we were going to go down that route. And then, of course, would the Scots vote for UDI? I have my doubts. I don't think Scots are sufficiently motivated in that way to say, this is a risk too far. We're just going to go ahead to do this without any sort of backup or certainty about what the outcome would be. So we then come to dissolution of the union, and there's two stances here. There's negotiating it after a positive majority vote, or there's negotiating it before a positive majority vote. Now, negotiating after a positive majority vote is really the line that I believe in Scotland is proposing, and to some extent I think Hamza Yousaf too, though I think that's got to really be clarified. Dissolution of the union is basically where, because we came together under the Treaty of Union, that's an international treaty, international law applies. And so that is the basis in which not only did we join together as the United Kingdom, but it is also the vehicle in which the union can be dissolved. And basically what would happen is, because the Treaty of Union says that Scottish MPs are entitled to sit in Westminster, if Scottish MPs ceased to sit in Westminster, walked out, then they would, that's basically effectively the dissolution of the union in legal terms, international legal terms. And what they would need to do would be to create a provisional government in Edinburgh or wherever, announce the dissolution of the union, and also advise the United Nations and the international community that the United Kingdom was now dissolved. And that's basically the theory of the legal position. Now, I'm calling it NWANI, which is short for England, Wales and Northern Ireland. As you see, it trips off the tongue, and it rhymes with fabulous. Anyway, what would their reaction be? Well, they've got to be very careful with that, because with a dissolution of the union, if there is no agreement, then the Vienna Convention, or the rules of the Vienna Convention, generally the ones which are followed. And the Vienna Convention, there's been a few Vienna Conventions, but the one 1983 is the one relating to this. And basically it says, in the absence of an agreement, then the assets and liabilities of the former state are basically divided up in a certain way. So Scotland would get the assets and liabilities which are based in Scotland of the Union, so things like Faslane and places like that, and in Lanning would get things based down in England. There's not that on there, some of the things based there. Some other things like the National Galleries and all that kind of stuff. There's also what the monarch's role would be. Now, it's potentially possible that if when Scotland becomes independent, we might decide to become a republic or whatever. But the monarch's role is quite crucial in this, because Hamza could speak to Charles and basically say to him, look, if you want any chance of being the King of Scots or your family being Scottish royalty in years to come, then you had better tell the UK government, or what's left of it, you know, that you do not want them to stand in the way of this dissolution. Whether that would be effective or not, who knows? But the monarch's role is important. If we go back to the Norwegian, when Norway left Sweden, although they had over 90% of the people voted for independence, the king at the time of Sweden, Oscar, he was all for basically military intervention. But wiser heads prevailed, and in fact he was so annoyed about it he wouldn't let one of his children become the monarch of Norway, and that largely is the reason why it was the second son of the Danish king who became the Norwegian king. So these roles historically have had some form of effect. There's the question of international law. Now, as I said before, if there was a majority of the vote cast, then that would largely speaking be the acid test of whether under international law it was acceptable or not. Again, it depends on the self-interest of the countries concerned. They would weigh up, you know, the importance of Scotland, whether for energy, the North Atlantic security measures, all these kind of things would all be sort of in the mix. And you get examples of Kosovo, which has been recognised by, I think, most of the EU states, but not them all. So it all depends on the individual countries concerned. I've mentioned about the Vienna Convention. Now, the Vienna Convention, because it was, that particular one was promulgated in 1985, it doesn't actually, it only deals with international treaties after that date. So obviously the Treaty of Union is 1707, but having said that, because of the rules that they now promulgate, these are generally accepted to be the rules which under international law they would follow about the subdivision of assets. And I then go into dissolution without the agreement. So this is negotiating after a positive majority vote. Now, even if we get one, will the UK government negotiate? I suspect initially they won't. What will be negotiated? You know? Well, I would have thought the United Kingdom government would want to be seen as the successor state of the current UK, and that means that they retain to a large extent their privileges, membership of the Security Council, things of that nature, membership of NATO, these kind of things. And all the kind of other trappings which go with that. But that doesn't mean we've got to accept that. How long will it take to agree? I would suspect that, given what happened with Brexit and all the rest of it, it could be a long period of negotiation, and we don't actually know, you know, what the outcome of that would be. What will be agreed? Independence of dissolution. If the UK government wants to be the successor state, that would basically be independence. If it's a case of, let's say, Scotland and Wani, that would be dissolution. And it's perfectly possible to have a dissolution and agree the terms of that out with what the Vienna Convention says. But what if the UK government doesn't agree? What do we do then? I mean, do we just say we're off at that stage? Or do we still try and persuade, use the international reaction to all of this to see if we can bring more pressure to bear on them? I don't know. But I suspect again that it would be strung out so long that, you know, many people that possibly were contemplating supporting independence might not do so. And of course, things can happen, pandemics can happen, there can be huge differences as a result of international conflict, and also, you know, huge economic things. So it could well be a cul-de-sac, this. But this is basically the proposal that I believe in Scotland is suggesting just now. I'm suggesting that we should actually negotiate before a positive vote. Now, obviously it would be conditional on us getting a majority vote, but first of all it would be transparent. So our electors would know exactly what we were talking about and what we're seeking, and also our opponents. So we're giving them due notice, probably a year or something like that before the next UK general election or so. What we would need would be an independence delivery group. Now that is separate from the Scottish Government, because there are potential issues and difficulties using UK civil servants, albeit they're working for the Scottish Government, to get involved in actually laying all the work that needs to be done before the general election in order to be in a position to basically solve the union the day after the general election. So it's of crucial importance, and I'll come to that in a minute. Will the UK government and or the opposition negotiate? Well, initially I think they wouldn't, but it's not just the UK government who need to be involved in these negotiations. The Labour Party would need to be involved in it as well, because there is obviously the potential that Labour might be the next government in Westminster. And that puts them in a difficult position, because not only they're having to fight the election in two fronts, they're having to fight each other, but they're also having to fight together to preserve the union. So that really does put them at a bit of a disadvantage. We've also got to think about what the reaction of the Unionists in Scotland would be. Well, I think again, if we lay our cards on the table before the election, then they know what these are, and you know, it's up to them to compete against these if they wish. And again, it's important, I suppose, that you know that if we really need to get a decent majority so that they can appreciate and decide what they want to do with their futures. Also, the effect of opinion polls, that could well affect whether the UK establishment will be prepared to negotiate. Because if the polls indicated that we might win this, then I wouldn't be at all surprised if you actually see some of the warheads and things like that from Coalport, you know, disappearing from the flight before the vote, that they'll be trying to ship some of the stuff out, etc., so that isn't necessarily something that would be available to potentially bargain in the event of a dissolution without an agreement. So dissolution with an agreement means we can still dissolve the union, but we've agreed to the terms, and it's really, we should be encouraging the Westminster establishment, you know, to negotiate these things before. As I say, there'll be a huge reluctance to do so. They might not agree to it, but they might be cajoled into that by various forces prior to the election, particularly probably the opinion polls. And dissolution without an agreement is basically when things get really quite interesting, because as I've said, if you dissolve without an agreement, the Vienna Convention is involved, and as a result of that, both parties, Scotland and Inwani, are not in a position to unilaterally do anything with the former reserved powers of the United Kingdom. So if a civil servant wanted to